Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my reading wrap up for the months of October, November, and December. And this is the last time we're going to do a 3-month wrap up because in 2020 we're getting our shit together. I'm getting off my bullshit and getting back on my real shit, and we're going to do these at the end of every single month on time. Ironically, as the months go on, I read less and less books, so October was a great month, December was not, quality and quantity wise, so we're just gonna dive in, I guess. Kind of a broad range of things here because we go from like spooky season to Christmas. I'm still dying from this cold. I apologize. Let's jump into October. The first book that I read in October, I actually have a physical copy of, this is throwing me off, was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is Riley Sager's third book. I have not read the previous two, but this one follows a young woman, Jules, who is down on her luck at the beginning of the novel, and she answers a newspaper ad for an apartment setting job at this very exclusive high-end apartment complex in New York. However, the job comes with some very strange rules. She can't spend a night away from the apartment, she can't have guests in the apartment, and she can't talk to the other tenants. Well, she breaks at least one of those rules by befriending a fellow apartment sitter, who then goes missing. It turns out she's not the first apartment sitter to go missing. So then Jules falls down this rabbit hole of trying to find out what happened to her friend, as well as the previous apartment sitter, in the dark, disturbing underbelly that is this apartment complex. I absolutely adored this book. I listened to an audiobook and it was a fantastic audiobook. It was so creepy and unsettling. It's not told in a linear format. We follow the story as it's going along, as well as it's interspliced with something that happens a week in the future. So it's kind of like a countdown of what happens to get Jules to where she is at the final scenes of the book. You think it ends and you think you have the story and the mystery figured out, and then that rug gets pulled out from under you and it's something totally more twisted and dark and bizarre than it was originally, but that makes it so much better. And I absolutely fucking loved this. I will read anything else that Riley Sager ever writes. He has a new book coming out in July that I cannot wait for. It has the same, or appears to have the same, dark, gothic, creepy vibes to it that this one had, and I loved this. This is one of my favorite books of the year by far. 5 out of 5 stars. So taking a nosedive into something completely and totally different, the next thing I read was Beautiful Bitch by Christina Lauren, which is a novella in the Beautiful Bastard series. I listened to that audiobook, did I? Yes. Follow the events right after Beautiful Bastard as the two main characters, Chloe and Bennett, settle into this routine together. They're just trying to find time to spend quality time together, and then they end up deciding to go on this vacation to France. And that's the whole entire story. I gave it a 3-star, which I feel like is really generous. I think that there was a pretty significant plot event that happened at the end of this, which kind of deems it necessary to read. I don't know if that event is recapped or included in the second book, but it's kind of annoying that they included it at the end of this book because it deems this book necessary, and it's so just trivial, and for the majority of it not, and the two characters just can't seem to connect. So all that sexual tension and great moments that happened in the first book are non-existent because they're just never together. I would read the full-length novel that comes after this, but it seems that the novellas are deemed important, but I just wish that I could skip them because it wasn't anything special. The next book that I read was actually a book that I had gotten on NetGalley as an e-arc, and that was 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. This is a Christmas YA contemporary novel that I adored. Follow a high school main character, Sophie, who is recently dumped by her boyfriend, and so she decides to go spend the holidays with her very large extended Italian family. While she's there, her whole family is just trying to cheer her up. They decide to set her up on 10 blind dates over the course of winter break. I loved this so much. There were so many hijinks and so many shenanigans and so many funny but heartfelt moments, and I loved the group of cousins. I loved all the holiday things, and she goes on so many fun and ridiculous dates, and I absolutely loved it. I thought the romance was very sweet as well, but it definitely isn't like the focus of the book. I would say that the family dynamics are really what makes this book shine, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This is something I would totally read again in the future. The next book that I read was Her Pretty Face by Robin Harding, and we're getting into spookathon territory here. This is a book that I listened to an audiobook, and I find it really hard to describe, so I wrote a synopsis. Frances is our main character, and her troubled son attends an elite academy, but a disturbing incident causes the other parents and kids to shun Frances and her son, except for the beautiful and elusive Kate. Kate only seems to be interested in befriending Frances, and as the two and their sons begin to bond, a shocking secret threatens to tear them apart. It's told in like 3 different points of view, and there's also it's non-linear. There is a past and a present timeline, so these 3 stories have to converge, as well as these 2 stories from different times have to converge. So there's like a lot going on in the story. It makes it hard to summarize exactly what it is. But I was very underwhelmed by this as a mystery, as a thriller, as any kind of like suspenseful novel. I didn't particularly like the revelations that end up happening in the end. What I had conjured in my brain I thought was much better than what actually happened on the page. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like really any of the relationships. And I was just very underwhelmed by this. I thought it was really mediocre. I talk about it pretty at length in my spookathon vlog. I was just not into this, and I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read for spookathon was Someone We Know by Sherry Lapina, which is my second Sherry Lapina book. In this one, we follow a quiet suburb where everyone knows everyone, but it's threatened by a series of home break-ins. And it's found out that he's snooping through computers and desk drawers and home offices and starts to like gain secretive information on his neighbors. And after some mysterious letters are sent out, a neighbor down the street shows up dead. It kind of had like a Desperate Housewives feeling to it, is that this person was doing something to this person, and then this person had dirt over here, and this person was, you know, ragging on this person, and then somebody shows up dead, and there's drama, and then there's break-ins, and it reminded me of, although I've never seen Desperate Housewives, it like felt like what I always imagined Desperate Housewives to be. I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I felt like it's pretty mediocre, middle of the road territory. I had a good time while I was reading it, but I don't find it to be super memorable. All these months later, I don't particularly remember like the twists. I could probably recall them if I were to think about it, or if something were to spark my memory, but it's nothing that like sits with me and has lingered with me, and something that I would be like, oh yeah, that book had fantastic plot twists, or it was like, oh my God, crazy, because I don't really remember. But I enjoyed it while I read it, which is why I gave it a 3.5 or 3.75 out of 5 stars. And then the next book that I read for Spookathon is kind of not at all in line with like a spooky theme, but it's fall themed, so I feel it was appropriate. And that was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks. This is a graphic novel that follows these 2 teens who are working at a pumpkin patch, and it's their last time working there before going off to college. And there is this girl that the main male character, Josie, has always had a crush on and never been able to approach. Deja takes it upon herself to set the 2 up on several meet-cutes throughout the book, and they just keep missing paths throughout the entire book, and there are so many shenanigans that happen, and so many fun things about this pumpkin patch. There's corn mazes and hay rides and pumpkin flavored everything that you could eat. The last day, where these 2 characters have basically abandoned their jobs and their posts and are wandering around the pumpkin patch but getting paid, trying to search for this girl that he has had a crush on. Loved this so much. I have a really hard time with graphic novels, and I've never liked one that I've read before. This was the first one that I read and was like deeply in love with, so I'm a little positive about it than I feel like a lot of other people are. I feel like a lot of people have not really enjoyed this, but I thought it was one of the most like sweet, precious, beautiful things ever, and I loved the artwork. It was just so perfectly fall. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The next thing I read for Spookathon was The Wife Between Us by Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks. I feel like in regards to this, the best description of this book is the blurb on the back. You should read nothing else. When you read this book, you will make many assumptions. You will assume you are reading about a jealous ex-wife. You will assume she's obsessed with her replacement, a beautiful younger woman who's about to marry the man they both love. You will assume you know the anatomy of this tangled love triangle. Assume nothing. And that's really all you need to know. All you need to know. I really, really enjoyed this. It's not my most favorite thriller mystery that I've ever read, but it is definitely like in my second tier of favorites. I was surprised, I was caught off guard, I was shocked, I did not see things coming. I had to go back and like reread sections because I was like, there's no way this is where we're going. And then I was like, oh, this is where we're going. I better buckle in because we're going there. And it just was a fun ride and I really enjoyed this. I feel like a lot of mystery thrillers that I've read recently, I've been so disappointed by. And so it was so nice to be like enjoying, surprised by a mystery thriller because I feel like it happens so rarely these days. And I ended up giving this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. See, I loved it. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Conversely though, the next book I did not love, and that was Rules for the Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall, which I received an arc of this from Penguin Teen. So thank you to Penguin Teen, but I did not enjoy this. This is filmed in like a faux documentary style similar to the Blair Witch Project. The local legend of a path that opens in the forest once a year. A long time ago, a girl named Lucy Gallows went missing in the forest and she kind of controls this path, this urban legend. The year before, our main character's sister goes out in search of this path. So a year later, Sarah has been waiting this entire time to go out searching for her sister. I did not enjoy this. I picked this up mainly on recommendation from Riley Marie. I had already requested it. And I was really expecting a lot from this because Riley like really enjoyed it. And I was just like not having it. I thought it was really unnecessarily long. I feel like there were a lot of things at the end that happened very quickly that should have happened much sooner. It went to like a weird place in the end. And it was too out there for me. Just too much. I did not have a fun time with this at all. I gave it 2.5 stars, but I feel like that is very generous. That is very generous. The next book that I read was Say You Still Love Me by K.A. Tucker. We have left Spookathon. We are no longer reading spooky things. We are now into romance. This is a second chance romance, which I adore second chance romances. And it's told in dual perspective or dual timeline. We follow these two main characters when they are teens at a summer camp. As camp counselors, and they're from like opposite sides of the tracks, which is another trope that I fucking adore. They spend this wonderful, crazy summer as camp counselors together. They fall head over heels in love for one another, but she's from a very wealthy family and he is not. And an event happens at the end of the summer that causes him to cut off contact from her entirely. Fast forward 13 years. She is now a very successful VP of her father's multi-billion-dollar corporation, and she is walking through the lobby of work one day and she notices a security guard who looks really familiar, and it turns out to be this long-lost love from camp 13 years ago. I loved this. I loved it. It had so many things going for it, setting it up for reasons why I would love it. Like, I love second chance romances that originate as teens and then happen later in adulthood. I love the bad boy and the rich girl stereotype, trope, whatever. I love like unnecessary baggage that's traveled with you through decades and forces you apart but brings you back together. It's a dramatic deal and I loved it, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I have more K. Tucker on my TBR and I cannot wait to read them. And that is everything that I read in October. We can now jump into November. I only read 3 things in November. It was a very weak, well, you know what happened in November? Disney Plus came out. First book that I read in November was The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson. This is a sequel to Truly Devious, which follows Stevie as she attends this elite boarding school for gifted children in the foothills of Vermont. Stevie is in particular at the school because she is obsessed with a missing persons case that happened at the school back in the 40s between the founder of the school and his wife and daughter. In the midst of trying to solve that cold case, one of her actual classmates shows up dead as well. So there are now 2 unsolved cases happening that she is in the middle of. I felt pretty lukewarm about the sequel, to be honest. I don't really have any strong feelings or memories attached to it. Like, I don't really remember what happened or how I felt about what happened or any of the plot points. I felt it was pretty mediocre, middle of the road, forgettable, unimpressionable. Even though I do intend to finish this series, I'm not particularly attached to these characters or particularly invested in their story, but I do kind of want to see what happens in the end. It was okay, it was fine, like I'm not mad about it, but I also don't remember it. I gave it a 3-star, which seems generous. I feel like a lot of these ratings seem real generous because now that I've been removed from them for so long, I'm like, did I actually like it that much? I don't think I did. The next book that I read in November was The Right Swipe by Alicia Rai, which is my 3rd Alicia Rai book, but from a different series. I was previously reading her Forbidden Heart series, which I would recommend you read before you read this because there are some Easter eggs in this for the other series that if you're a fan of the other series and then you read this, you will be like, oh, that's exactly what I did, and that's probably my favorite part of the whole book. In this one, we follow 2 rival dating sites. One is an app named Crush designed by our main character Rhiannon, which is predominantly for women, and then the other is an old school online dating service. There is a new face of matchmaker who ends up being this man that Rhiannon matched with on her own app, and they had this crazy one-night stand together, and then he ghosted her. When she is attempting to buy this company, Matchmaker, and he's the new spokesperson for it, and they have to work together on these campaigns, there's some tension, sexual and anger that arises. I did really enjoy this, but I felt like her other books were better. I wasn't particularly swept up in the romance of this one. I do still plan to read the sequel. It comes out later this year, Girl Gone Viral, but I wasn't like particularly attached to Rhiannon and Samson's relationship or their dynamics. Like, I had a fun time while reading it, but I don't think they're a new favorite couple of mine, and I just gave it a 3.5 middle of the road, slightly better than middle of the road rating. And the final book I read in November was The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is actually a reread for me so that I can go ahead and read the sequel concluding novel. This is a YA thriller, which I feel like Jennifer Lynn Barnes does YA thrillers really, really well. That is in the vein of Scandal meets Veronica Mars. Our main character, Tess, has spent her entire life living on her grandfather's ranch in Montana until one day her mysterious older sister that she doesn't really know that well shows up, plucks her from her life, and takes her to DC and thrusts her into a world of politics and power struggles at an elite DC boarding school for politicians' children. While she is there, she's immersed into a world of lies and secrets when a conspiracy surfaces involves one of the families of her classmates. I remember enjoying this more on my first read as opposed to my reread. I don't know why, maybe because I've already hit the beats and I already knew the shocking, suspenseful things that were to come. I'm very, very much excited for the sequel though, because I have heard that it has some really crazy, shocking moments that happen in it. I read this really more to read the sequel than to enjoy this novel. I gave this a 3.75 on my reread. I think the first time I gave it a 4. So I only dropped it down a smidge. Now let's move into December, where I read 2 books and didn't particularly like either of them. The first book that I read, I don't know why I read this, so don't even get me started. It was Dashing Through the Snow by Debbie McComber, which is an author my mom really loves. It was a fun time while it lasted. It's a novel about a young woman who is trying to fly home for the holidays to visit her mom. However, she cannot board the airplane for whatever reasons. She is forced to rent a car and drive up to Seattle from, I believe, San Francisco. However, there's only one car left at the rental place when she gets there, and there's another man trying to rent it. He coincidentally is also going to Seattle for a job opportunity, so they decide to drive up together. I was really enjoying the book and the romance all up until it ended real abruptly. We were going along at this really good, steady, fun pace, and I was enjoying all of the beats, and then within a chapter, everything is resolved. I feel like it could have used another half of the book. I don't know why she didn't take the time to write a, you know, cohesive second half of this book, why she just cut it off so abruptly, but she did, and it was a choice. I did not like it, so I gave it a 2.5 to 3 star. Like, I really enjoyed everything up until the last chapter when it was just done. And then I listened to an audiobook, One Day in December by Josie Silver, which was a really popular release last Christmas. This is like not really a Christmas book or even really a winter book. The whole reason it's called One Day in December is because we are following these two characters who, one is on a bus and one is at a bus stop, and the one that's on the bus, they're pulling into the bus stop and then pulling out of the bus stop, and they happen to look out the window and see this really handsome man sitting at the bus stop. They lock eyes and they just feel in their soul this like instant connection. They drive off and they never see each other again. A year later, the main character's roommate brings home her new boyfriend, walks in the door. Our main character is like, there's the boy from the bus stop that I've been looking for a year. How weird that you happen to find him first and are now madly in love with him. You are following these two characters throughout their lives who theoretically should have been soulmates, and the opportunity passes them, and then they're thrust on these different journeys, but they're friends, so they're still like communicating all of their life mishaps with each other. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I also didn't get enough like romance from the actual two main characters. I wanted them to have more moments over the years where they come together. So in the end, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a very moving book, and I just wanted like a little more, like a little kick more to it, and it would have been 4.5 stars. So that is it. Those are all the books that I read in October, November, and December. I would love to know what you guys read in the later months of 2019. I know that it's, you know, been long gone and we're all thinking about 2020 now, but I'm clearly not quite there yet. Do you want to reminisce with me about the last couple of months of the year for you? Excuse me, I just burped. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Just like I'm rambling, I'm just making sounds just to make sounds, and I'm gonna stop. Tell me in the comments. Something, anything, I don't care. All right, that's it. I'm cutting myself off. I'm done.